Welcome back, guys. Well, today I'm here at the cabin and I'm really glad it's standing. Stay tuned. Well, I was literally holding my breath as I was coming up to the cabin on this trip. Unfortunately, we had a major natural disaster in this region in the last 24 hours. We were hit with 2 tornadoes, an EF2 and an EF3. A huge storm came through, and I really wasn't aware of the potential for tornadoes for the storm until I was out on a walk. Not at the cabin, I wasn't actually at this site. I was out on a walk and my cell phone emergency alert system went off in my hand. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Some kinds of natural disasters, emergency alerts now, they can actually access your phone and send across an emergency notification. So my phone was going off while I was out on a walk, saying that I needed to take immediate cover. An imminent tornado was on the way. So you can imagine how terrifying that can be. We don't live in a highly active tornado area. However, Ontario does have, its fair share of tornadoes over the last decade. And with climate change, that's certainly increasing, the wild weather that is. So anyway, we took cover and thankfully we were missed. However, we suffered power failures. There was major destruction in and around the region. And another area that was hit because the swath of storm actually tracked over the cabin and headed toward us where we live permanently. So anyways, it was really scary, being involved in that kind of situation. Thankfully, we weren't in the path of the tornado when it touched down, but a lot of people were, and I really feel for them. There's a lot of destruction, a lot of rebuilding that has to happen. So we headed out to the cabin, wondering, what's it going to be like here? We'd had early reports in the region that other areas were also very severely damaged from microbursts and severe gusts of winds. I think the 2 tornadoes that touched down were confirmed to be EF2 and EF3. We're talking winds over 200 kilometers an hour, doing that kind of damage. So anyway, we headed out to the cabin, and thankfully it looks like a lot of the major damage, we avoided it, thank goodness. There were a few branches down, but nothing catastrophic. I really was thinking, oh geez, here we go. It's going to be quite the mess to clean up, but we were extremely fortunate. But all this, of course, leads me to think a bit more about disaster preparation. What would I have done if I was out here in the eye of the storm? How would I know about it? And what should I do to prepare myself should this happen again in the future? Other disasters to consider that could happen at the cabin, not only inclement weather like tornadoes, but snowstorms, blizzards, getting trapped in here, fires that could happen either in the cabin or in the field or in the woods, tracking toward the cabin. How should I be prepared for that? Another thing to consider too would be flooding, and we had a 100-year flood last spring, and thankfully the cabin's up high and dry on a hill, so that's another important thing to think about when you're building your cabin, is to build it up not in a swampy area, because you could be affected by severe flooding. So it's getting a little bit cooler outside now, so I'm just going to head inside and we'll show you a little bit about our new heater and some things to consider for fire safety inside the cabin. It's been getting cooler at night here, and we are so thrilled to have this new propane heater installed that you saw in the last videos. It is fantastic. Last night it went down to about 3 to 4 degrees Celsius overnight, and this heater kept the cabin at a very nice 16, 17 degrees, which is what I like. I don't like it too hot. So we can certainly keep it warmer than that, but then we're going to go through a lot more propane. So having a propane heater also means we have to be very prepared in terms of safety, for fire safety, as well as safety for carbon monoxide, which is a byproduct of combustion. Now this unit, the toxic gases vent to the outside, but if there was a malfunction, we'd want to be sure that we were safe. As you know, we have a smoke detector with CO2 detector in one. We also have one up in the loft area. Whenever we're here for the first time after not being here for a while, we test the unit by pushing this button. It's also incredibly important to make sure that you've changed the batteries in them with every time change. So at least twice a year, inspect the batteries and inspect to make sure they're working and don't need to be replaced. As a part of preparing for a disaster, to happen at the cabin or off-grid, one thing that's incredibly important is to have a plan and be prepared for when things go awry. One important thing is to plan your escape route out of your cabin, or if you have a trailer or some other off-grid home. So something happens, there's a tornado warning, there's imminent alerts to take cover, or there's a fire in your cabin. What do you got to do? You want to make a plan to escape. Certainly during a tornado, I don't want to be inside this cabin. There's too many windows, too many things that could break open, smash, land on me. You know, the cabin could be picked up and thrown around, especially if the tornado touches down very close. So I wanted to escape the cabin. And if there's a fire, obviously I'd want to escape the cabin. These are things where it's non-negotiable, I'm getting out of here. One thing I've done to prepare for a situation like that is to make an escape plan, an escape route out of the cabin. So thankfully there's many ways to escape the cabin, and you know, we've got a little plan drawn out here. You guys can see that. And there's definitely 5 different escape routes from the downstairs, and there's one from the upstairs, which is excellent. Lots of options. So as you can see on the diagram, there's escape routes out the windows on each side and out the front door. Our windows are quite large, so it's really easy to just pop the screen out and jump out the window. So wherever you are in the cabin, there is a way to get out. Let me take you upstairs. I know some of you had inquired how we would get out of the loft if there was an emergency situation, and I want to show you how we would do it. So here we are up in the loft now, and you can see it's a really small space, and we have a window right there. So how are we going to get out, especially if there's a fire down in the main part of the cabin? One thing we did was to purchase a ladder that can be used to hang out the window. That way, when there is an emergency down below, we can certainly get out of the cabin. It sits right here, right at the base of the bed, ready to spring into action. Here's what it looks like from the outside. So it's perfect. And that the lower pane actually of that window does pop off, so you'll be able to get out of there really well. And the ladder itself is about 13 feet. It's a one-time use only thing. Pray to God I never have to use it, but it's really good to have around. It's always really important to have a functioning fire extinguisher, and really important to check that your extinguisher is working and charged. If not, you can talk to your local fire department and they can help you out with that. We have 2 here in the cabin. We have 1 downstairs. We also have 1 up in the loft area there in case there was a fire to start up there. Once we've escaped the building, it's really important to have a plan to meet someplace else. So, you know, if it's a tornado, for example, you're going to want to go and lie down in a low, flat-lying area to avoid getting debris falling on you. If there's a fire at the cabin, we definitely have a couple of outbuildings that we can escape to. Our current plan is to go to the new shower house, where we'll keep storage of, you know, winter clothing, extra clothes, an extra heater, some water, and a little bit of food, just in case the cabin was to be totally engulfed in flames and we needed some shelter. Let's go check out the new shower house. Some of you asked why the bathroom or shower house wasn't going to be attached to the cabin. Certainly we wanted it that way. You know, we didn't want to have the extra humidity of the shower kind of seeping into the cabin. And it also, you know, provides an escape spot for us to go to. Well, especially if there's a fire at the cabin, you know, we want to have another place to go, especially if it happens when it's -30 outside. And, you know, we want some place to go to seek shelter. Well, the shower house is merely, you know, 2-minute, not even, walk from the cabin. So let's go check it out. We've been working on it, and let's take a look. We've been working hard at the shower house, and our goal is to get a lot of it sort of finished by, you know, the time the snow falls, but I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll try our very best. You know, this will be our spot to go for an evacuation should there be a really big problem with the cabin, like a fire. So today we're working on leveling it out. Let me just show you a little bit of that. Just re-leveling the shower house right now. Going to get it up by an extra length of brick to get it off the ground before the snow hits. And it's all done. So it was leveled before, but the bottom corner here by the door was actually touching the earth, and I didn't like that. So what we did was we jacked it up some more, put some more bricks and wood shims under there so it's fully level. As you can see, the lath for the shiplap siding has gone up, and of course I've tie-parred it. So it's right now it's sort of, you know, a bit weather resistant. So when there's some heavy rain and stuff like that, it's just going to kind of run off the side walls there. So it is a good size, obviously, when you guys have seen it before. And the goal is the shower is going to be in this back corner here with a toilet here, a composting toilet. A sink will be in this corner, probably a laundry tub type sink, and a lot of storage is going to be here. Because this will be a spot that we go to during an evacuation from the cabin, we will have an extra heating source in here. Right now we have that old kerosene heater. Who knows, maybe we'll put in a little tiny wood stove in here. Also, really important to have an extra source of you know, food stored out here, and also clothing. In the wintertime, we're going to have the propane heater on. There is a risk for fire, so if there was something to happen, we want to come out here, and we may not have a lot of time to grab our clothes or things like that. What we're going to do is have a trunk full of winter clothing, hats, mitts, jackets, things like that, snow pants, in case an evacuation is needed. Then we'll have all the supplies that we need. We don't have the chest built to store the winter clothes just yet. It'll happen in the next month or so. So right now we'll have some extra supplies just in a backpack sort of kept here in the shed, so that in emergency we would have a backup plan. So some warmer clothes, way to start a fire, extra set of car keys, and if you're comfortable with it, you can put some identification in here just in case everything was to burn to the ground quickly at the cabin. Well, you haven't lost your ID. Many of you inquired a bit about how we would get water, for the shower. And what we do is basically we're going to have gutters behind me on the edges of the roof. Now those are going to have to be removable gutters because we do have a lot of ice storms here. We have a lot of snow, we have a lot of ice. And if they're to be left up all winter long, they're going to get ripped off and they're going to be broken forever. So kind of like we did in the shed where the gutters attach, they're on the back of a board that hooks onto the side of the roof. That's what we're going to do here. That's how the water is going to be collected for the shower house. We'll always have water available for emergency purposes from rainwater collected off the roof, probably from around April through to November. Other than that, we'd have to have some water in the cabin ready to go at the door to evacuate. That's one thing in the wintertime we'd have some difficulty with. However, in the winter you can always have, keep a couple extra pots out here, put some snow in the pot, boil it, and you can have your fresh water. Here's the old deck, and we have to move it now by the shed. So we're just going to be attempting to move it using the log arch. It's probably an easier way to do it. So we'll get it over by the shed. I'm going to put some garden cloth underneath it so that the grass doesn't grow up underneath the deck. So we're making progress. As you can see, using the log arch, you can kind of pull it along. You just got to put some boards underneath, something that has a little less friction than the grass to drag it along. We're just going to go grab a couple more boards. We just have to bring it over there so it's not really that far. And through the magic of television, it's all done. We've got the deck in front of the shower house. It's all level, and we're ready to continue on with the build. And of course, if all else fails, we can head to the shed for safety and shelter. And take a look here. We have a solar powered security light now that when you walk in, it turns on so you can kind of see everything. So that's wonderful. And down here, another important thing for emergency preparedness off-grid is a generator. As you can see right down there, that's our generator. It needs a little bit of servicing. So today, one of my jobs is going to be to replace the capacitor in it and also the carburetor. So important to keep these things in service and realizing, if there's something going on with it, it needs to be fixed because you never know when you're going to have to use it. So here's the new carburetor right there. That's got to go in. I noticed earlier in the season that the fuel line was also cracked, so that's got to get replaced as well. So important to keep things in service, and a generator, a really important thing to have off-grid so that, if you need power for, tools to repair things, to run a lighting system, if you run out of solar power and your battery banks are depleted, that you have some power. So we'll be working on that this afternoon, getting that ready for the fall. So for off-grid use, it's really important to have redundancy in your systems. So even though you may be using solar for your lighting and for your power, what if something happened? What if a branch fell on top of your solar panels and you're unable to charge your battery banks? It's a good idea, like I said, to have a generator ready to go, especially if you rely on power to keep you warm and for your lighting when it gets really dark early in the winter, for example. So redundancy is key. See where you can double up on things without really, astronomically increasing your costs, but you won't regret it if you need it in the future. So how are you going to find out if there is a natural disaster or an emergency happening in your area and that you would need to, take action, either evacuate or not? Well, a couple things that we have here at the cabin to help us out, when we're kind of off grid, no TVs, things like that, would be to have one of our Motorola handheld radios here. So there's a specific channel on here where I can get weather updates. So when the sky's looking threatening or there's something going on, you can certainly turn on the radio and listen to see what's going on. Also FM radio, if there's something really nasty going on in the region, obviously it's going to be broadcast so that everyone can hear about it and learn what the best course of action is. So having access to a radio, an FM radio, AM radio, and one of these little handheld walkie-talkies so that you can be in contact when you're getting prepared for evacuation, and having this capability to listen to the weather radio is really important. Some areas that are off the grid or where you're traveling may have a cellular network. If so, be sure to carry your cell phone with you. As I said, my phone went off and an alert came through and told me to take immediate shelter. There was a text message there from the local emergency authorities to take cover that a tornado was on the way. So if you are fortunate enough to have cell access off the grid, then be sure to carry your phone with you so that you can get an emergency notification. So if you get a notification like that, or you hear on the local radio station that bad weather's headed your way with damaging hail, high winds, possibly tornado or hurricane, really important, notify someone where you are and what your plan is if you can, because if something goes wrong, people want to know where to find you. Obviously, you need to decide whether you should evacuate or leave, the edifice where you're staying. So, listen to your local authorities. Are they recommending that you leave the area, or are they recommending you to just take cover? Things like that. You'll have to make a decision yourself if there's no immediate evacuation notice issued. So for example, for tornado, we have to make a decision whether we stay inside the cabin or head outside. My preference would be to head outside and to get into a low-lying area, simply because of the amount of tree coverage we have here and the amount of windows and open space we have in the cabin. There's a high chance for injury, so we're going to want to evacuate. So here at the cabin as well, we like to be prepared. We like to have at least 7 days worth of food and some water here as well, in case, for example, we get snowed in or there's another, disaster that we cannot, leave this region easily. So really important to have a lot of dry goods, canned goods, dehydrated foods, the MREs that I talked about in a previous video. Those are really easy, and they're really easy to store and easy to grab and go if you have to evacuate. And like I said with the MRE video, they don't need to be heated up in case of the MRE Star. What's really awesome with the MRE Star kit is that comes with a food heater inside of it, so you don't have to worry about making fire or anything like that. So you want to be able to have, at your cabin, if you're able to do so, 7 days worth of food, some water, a lot of extra supplies, blankets, extra clothing, in case, you're stuck in inclement weather for a while, or you need to survive off grid with no contact with the outside world for at least 7 days. It's important to have non-perishable items. If there's a loss of hydro for an extended period of time, food in your fridge or in your coolers will probably not be safe for very long. Really important that you don't consume food that has, reached, room temperature or been above 3 degrees Celsius for a long period of time, because you could make yourself very sick with food poisoning and further complicate yourself in an emergency situation. So when you're off grid or in your home, for example, make sure to have a good storage of non-perishable items so that you and your family can enjoy food safely during an emergency. And another important thing, I talked about it earlier in one of my other videos, is to have some way of communicating, either your cell phone or having one of those personal location beacons. If like a disaster happened, you were gravely injured, trapped in, say, your cabin or whatever that had collapsed during a storm, or in really heavy snowfall or something like that. So having a personal location beacon. If you don't have a personal location beacon, an inReach would be a great idea as well. Just being aware of the charges that you can accrue from the monthly fees for keeping that service up. But it's so worthwhile if you're off grid and you end up in a really bad situation. At least if there's no cell network, you can text someone or send an SOS message that you need help. So having one of those emergency devices is really important in something like that, like in a natural disaster. It's also important to have a first aid kit off grid, as well as, we carry also a CPR mask. And that's really important because, even minor injuries can become catastrophic if you're trapped out here for any period of time waiting for rescue. You want to be able to treat the wounds as you can until someone can get out here and help you. We also took wilderness first aid. So, for example, if there was to be an injury during evacuation, or during, a branch fell on you as you're trying to escape and you have a large wound or you broke something, we both have training so that we can help ourselves and others in case an emergency like that. Because you never know, if there is a natural disaster, will you be able to get reached by the ambulance in time? You don't know, especially if you're off grid and you're quite a distance from a major city. You might be out on your own for a little while, especially if there is a natural disaster. So important, again, to service your first aid kit, have a CPR mask, and perhaps take a course, with St. John Ambulance or another wilderness first aid group to teach you how to stabilize wounds and to take care of yourself and others during the case of an emergency. Our propane heating system is great. However, I realize it is not an infinite resource for us to have propane all the time. So we always have to consider backup heat sources, especially if we're trapped out here in an ice storm, for example. We had a huge ice storm in eastern Ontario many years ago. and a lot of people ended up in trouble, and the people that did really well were people that had wood stoves. So certainly, we have the kerosene heater here, lots of kerosene set up. We've got lots of wood around us, and we were able to make fire, and we can certainly heat the cabin with wood if we need to. We can get very creative. So important to have backup plan in terms of your heating as well. Even if you live in the city, it's good to have another way to heat your home. Make sure you have a backup generator if you have a furnace, just so that you can, keep yourself warm. It can, power over 24 hours and -30 can be a very significant problem in your home. It can get down very, very cold, especially if an old drafty house. You want to be as safe as possible. So redundancy, again, is key. Another important thing to mention is to check in on your neighbors. So once you are secure in your situation and you're safe, if the disaster or emergency is affecting people in your region, to check in on your neighbors, make sure they're okay. Do they need anything? It's amazing how well a community can come together during a disaster, and certainly that's what's happening now since the tornadoes touched down. A lot of social media applications now have ways that people can check themselves in safe. For example, on Facebook, there's a capability to do that. Also, when you know you're safe, maybe if you can, contact somebody to let them know where you are and that you're safe, and to make sure that they're okay too. Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video and you learned a little bit of something from it. It's really scary. I know a lot of you guys have lived through hurricanes, tornadoes, other natural disasters. The tornadoes produced by this storm are actually leftover remnants from Hurricane Florence that came off the East Coast. So I know a lot of people lost their lives, and there's a lot of destruction and cleanup after something like that. Please let me know down below in the comments if you've ever lived through a natural disaster. Share your story with us if you want to. If you have any tips too on preparations for natural disasters, something that I've missed maybe, please also put it down below in the comments for us all to consider. I hope you guys have a wonderful week as always. Take care.